There are moments when distance becomes the problem. When emails, messages, calls, no matter how efficient they are, start to feel incomplete. You can share information remotely, but you can't always share meaning. You can explain facts, but you can't always transfer weight. And some things carry too much weight to be compressed into a screen or reduced to a few carefully chosen words. I've learned that the most important conversations don't survive shortcuts. They demand presence. Not because of tradition or formality, but because humans are wired to understand more than language. We read hesitation, certainty, conviction. We feel urgency before it's spoken. When you're in the same room, there's no buffering, no delay, no space to hide behind polish. What matters comes through clearly. When something truly matters, you don't want interpretation, you want alignment. You want to know that what you're saying is being received exactly as intended. That the gravity of the moment isn't lost in translation, because some conversations aren't about agreement, they're about understanding. And understanding doesn't happen at a distance. We live in a world that celebrates speed, fast communication, faster decisions, faster outcomes. But speed can flatten nuance, it can strip away context, and when the stakes are high, when a decision can alter direction, redefine trust, or change the future, you don't rush it, you slow down, you show up. Being in the same space forces honesty. It removes the escape routes. You can't multitask your way through it, you can't postpone clarity. You're there, fully engaged, dealing with what actually matters instead of what's convenient. That's why some conversations feel urgent, not because they're dramatic, but because delaying them creates more risk than facing them now. When I say this is too important to handle from a distance, what I really mean is this: some truths deserve your full attention, your full presence, and your full courage. And if it matters enough to say in person, it matters enough to face head on. There's another reason some conversations can't wait, and it's not urgency, it's responsibility. When the outcome of a discussion can shape direction, affect people, or change the trajectory of something bigger than any one person, delaying it becomes a decision in itself. Silence isn't neutral. Distance isn't harmless. Choosing not to engage fully right now has consequences whether we acknowledge them or not. I've seen how small misunderstandings grow when they're left to travel through layers of communication. A sentence gets interpreted instead of understood. Intent gets replaced by assumption. And before you realize it, the original point, the thing that actually mattered, gets buried under noise. That's how momentum stalls. That's how trust erodes. Not through conflict, but through avoidance. When something is important, clarity becomes a duty. You owe it to the people involved to be precise, direct, and present. Not because you have all the answers, but because you respect the weight of the situation enough not to outsource it to convenience. Showing up in person is a signal. It says, this matters enough for my time, my attention, and my accountability. Hard conversations are rarely comfortable. They force you to confront uncertainty, disagreement, or risk. But avoiding discomfort doesn't eliminate risk, it just postpones it. And usually, it grows in the meantime. The most effective leaders, builders, and partners I've known aren't the ones who avoid tension. They're the ones who step into it early, when it's still manageable and honest. There's also something grounding about being faced. To face when stakes are high, it slows your thinking just enough to be deliberate. You listen more carefully. You choose words with intention. You remember that decisions don't exist in a vacuum. They affect real people, real systems, real futures. That awareness sharpens judgment. If this conversation feels heavy, that's because it should. When is how you know it's real. And when something carries real weight, you don't pass it along casually, you carry it yourself. Because responsibility doesn't travel well at a distance. It shows up in person. There's a deeper layer to why some things need to be said in person, and it has nothing to do with formality. It's about truth. Real truth doesn't live comfortably in carefully edited messages or delayed responses. It shows up in pauses, in tone, in the moments where you stop talking and actually listen. That's where you find out whether people are aligned or just politely agreeing from a distance. When you're building something that matters, alignment isn't optional. You can't afford to assume it exists. You have to verify it. And the only reliable way to do that is to be in the same room, looking each other in the eye, feeling the weight of what's being discussed. You can sense hesitation. You can sense conviction. You can tell when someone is nodding along versus when they're truly committed. Distance makes it easy to hide uncertainty. It lets people delay hard decisions, soften disagreements, or avoid admitting what they really think. But unresolved uncertainty is dangerous. It leaks into execution. It shows up as hesitation, half measures, and quiet resistance later on. And by the time you notice it, the cost is much higher than it would have been to address it early. Being present forces honesty on everyone involved, including yourself. You can't multitask your way through a serious conversation. You can't skim past discomfort. You have to sit with it long enough to understand it. And that process, uncomfortable as it is, creates clarity. Not artificial agreement, but real understanding. I've learned that when people leave a room after a difficult but honest conversation, they may not all feel comfortable, but they feel clear. They know where they stand, they know what's expected, and most importantly, they know that what they're building is grounded in reality, not assumptions. That clarity is momentum. It saves time, energy, and trust down the line. It turns uncertainty into direction and tension into progress. So if this feels like a conversation that can't be postponed, that's because alignment can't be automated. Some things only move forward when the truth is spoken face to face. There's a deeper layer to why some things need to be said in person, and it has nothing to do with formality. It's about truth. Real truth doesn't live comfortably in carefully edited messages or delayed responses. It shows up in pauses in tone, in the moments where you stop talking and actually listen. That's where you find out whether people are aligned or just politely agreeing from a distance. When you're building something that matters, alignment isn't optional. You can't afford to assume it exists. You have to verify it, and the only reliable way to do that is to be in the same room, looking each other in the eye, feeling the weight of what's being discussed. You can sense hesitation. You can sense conviction. You can tell when someone is nodding along versus when they're truly committed. Distance makes it easy to hide uncertainty. It lets people delay hard decisions, soften disagreements, or avoid admitting what they really think. But unresolved uncertainty is dangerous. It leaks into execution. It shows up as hesitation, half measures, and quiet resistance later on. And by the time you notice it, the cost is much higher than it would have been to address it early. Being present forces honesty on everyone involved, including yourself. You can't multitask your way through a serious conversation. You can't skim past discomfort. You have to sit with it long enough to understand it. And that process, uncomfortable as it is, creates clarity. Not artificial agreement, but real understanding. I've learned that when people leave a room after a difficult but honest conversation, they may not all feel comfortable, but they feel clear. They know where they stand, they know what's expected, and most importantly, they know that what they're building is grounded in reality, not assumptions. That clarity is momentum. It saves time, energy, and trust down the line. It turns uncertainty into direction and tension into progress. So if this feels like a conversation that can't be postponed, that's because alignment can't be automated. Some things only move forward when the truth is spoken face to face. There's also a moment when talking isn't about exchanging ideas anymore. It's about making a decision. And decisions change things. They set direction, they close doors, they commit resources, time, and people. That's why the most important ones can't be left vague or deferred indefinitely. At some point, to stop circling the problem and choose a path, what I've seen over and over is that progress doesn't stall because of lack of intelligence or effort. It stalls because people hesitate to decide. They want more data, more reassurance, more certainty. But absolute certainty doesn't exist. If you wait for it, you'll wait forever. The real skill is learning when you have enough information to move forward and having the courage to act on it. Face conversations create that moment of commitment. When you make a decision in the room with everyone present, it carries weight. There's no ambiguity about what was agreed to, no room for reinterpretation later. Everyone leaves knowing exactly what direction they're heading and why. That shared understanding is powerful. It turns plans into action. There's also accountability that comes with it. When you decide together openly, you're no longer hiding behind process or possibility. You're standing behind a choice. And that accountability sharpens focus. It pushes teams to execute, adapt, and solve problems instead of endlessly debating them. This doesn't mean every decision is perfect. Some will be wrong. That's inevitable. But a clear decision, even a flawed one, is almost always better than paralysis. You can correct course. You can iterate, you can improve, but you can't build anything meaningful if you're stuck waiting for permission from the future. Decisions are how vision becomes reality. They're the bridge between thinking and doing. And the most important ones demand presence, honesty, and resolve, because momentum doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from choosing to move forward. There's another reason this matters, and it's more human than technical. When things are truly important, they carry emotion, fear, excitement, doubt, hope. Those don't transmit well with text or slides. You can't read hesitation in an email. You can't feel conviction in a spreadsheet. But you can sense it instantly when you're in the same room with someone. Being face to face forces honesty. You see when someone believes in what they're saying and when they're just repeating something that sounds safe. You hear the pauses. You notice the energy shift when an idea clicks or when it doesn't. That feedback is immediate and it's invaluable. It allows you to adjust in real time, to go deeper, to ask the question that wouldn't exist otherwise. Great outcomes don't come from perfect plans. They come from shared belief. People commit fully only when they feel understood and when they understand the why behind the work. That kind of alignment happens fastest in person. It's where trust is built, not as a concept, but as a felt experience. And once trust is there, speed follows. I've seen teams move faster after one honest conversation than after months of updates and reports. Not because they suddenly became smarter, but because they were finally aligned. Everyone knew what mattered, what didn't, and what they were willing to sacrifice to get it right. Clarity removes friction. Trust removes fear. Together they unlock momentum. This is especially true when the stakes are high, when failure is expensive, when success changes everything. In those moments, distance creates misunderstanding, and misunderstanding creates risk. Presence reduces both. It tightens the feedback loop between intent and action. If something is important enough to change the trajectory, it's important enough to look each other in the eye and talk it through. No filters, no delays, just clarity, commitment, and shared responsibility. Because the future isn't built through distance, it's built through connection, and this is where it all comes together. After the analysis, the debate, the urgency, and the need to sit across from each other, there's a final realization that matters more than any strategy or plan. Moments like this don't come often, and when they do, you don't delay them. There are points in life and work where waiting feels responsible, where postponing seems logical. You tell yourself you'll circle back, gather more data, refine the idea. But deep down, when something is time-sensitive in a way that can't be measured, you feel it. The cost of waiting quietly increases, not in numbers, but in missed alignment, lost momentum, and diluted purpose. When something is truly important, action becomes a form of respect for the idea, for the people involved, and for the future you're trying to build. Acting doesn't mean having all the answers. It means recognizing that clarity often emerges through motion, not before it. The decision to show up, to speak directly, to engage fully, that's what moves things from possibility to reality. The biggest breakthroughs don't happen when conditions are perfect. They happen when people decide that what's at stake is worth their full attention right now. That decision creates focus. Focus creates urgency, and urgency, when guided by intention, creates progress. This isn't about drama or impulse. It's about responsibility. If you believe something matters, if you believe it can change outcomes, prevent mistakes, or unlock something meaningful, then you don't outsource that moment to distance or delay. You take ownership of it. You show up. You speak clearly. You listen carefully. Because leadership at its core is recognizing when a moment demands more than convenience. It demands presence. It demands courage. And it demands action before comfort has a chance to slow you down. Some conversations shape details. Others shape direction. And the ones that shape direction can't wait.